eBay is changing the game. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Usually, if somebody's thinking of selling some gear, the big two online marketplaces that people think of are eBay and Reverb. These two have been fighting each other for years, to the point where eBay came down off their 10% and matched Reverb, and then Reverb raised theirs, so there was a small point in time when eBay was cheaper to sell on, but then they decided to both match each other at 5%, and then eventually eBay just gave up trying to compete. They just raised their rates to something more sustainable because people are going to use their platform because it's a little bit different from Reverb. So currently it stands at 6.35% versus 5%, and that's just the selling fee, not payment processing, etc. But my friends, eBay is changing the game again. So 2 days ago, as I usually do, I'm browsing what Gibson guitars were just recently listed. I found a guitar that was kind of interesting, so I decided to make an offer on it. But instead of the usual, okay, your offer has been submitted, I got a new page. They are forcing you to make payment if the seller accepts your offer. And I, for one, think that is a fantastic idea for not only the sellers, but also for the buyers. So let's talk as a seller. How does this help you? Well, you actually know your item is going to sell if you accept the offer, which as a professional seller, that gives me incredible peace of mind because half the time you accept an offer, the guy disappears for 3 or 4 days, and then eventually the site says, okay, you need to cancel this order now that he's not paying. That just took your item off the market. Maybe somebody else was going to buy it, but they saw that it was gone, so they moved on to something else. It hurts the seller more so than you think. So by eBay now taking authorization that they can take the payment from the buyer as soon as you accept, that gets rid of that completely. And sometimes people are selling things because they need money fast, like they've got a bill or their mortgage coming up. So they might take a lower offer if it's guaranteed to right away sell and they can ship the thing out the door. This also cuts down on the espionage of listings. It's not very often, but sometimes a buyer will message you saying, hey, I'm considering these two guitars. What makes yours better? Occasionally, that seller will make a really good offer on that other guitar just to get it off the market for a couple of days, and then they can message them back saying, well, hey, mine's available. That other one has sold. It's not a common practice, but trust me, it does happen. I would not suggest sending messages like that if you're a buyer. More importantly here, this also will help cut down on scams. Sometimes on Reverb, somebody will send you a full price offer, but in the message it'll say, hey, contact my dad, he's interested in this guitar at this phone number and or email, and it's just a scam setup. They can't do that anymore unless they actually have a payment source to send that, and then you can just completely bypass their scam. But most importantly, it makes the buyers think before they offer. I'm guilty of this myself. I see a pretty guitar and then I make them an offer. But now that I know that this is a 100% binding thing, I'm gonna come down here and look for all the details. I'm going to be more motivated to ask them questions. I'm going to review these photos a little bit closer. Not because I personally back out of my offers, but it's just more so a mental thing. This is a 100% it has to go through type of offering. So how does this help the buyers? Well, you now stand out as 100% serious. You might be able to get a better deal because they know if they accept your offer, it's a done deal. They're going to get their payment. And that is going to significantly speed up the process because as soon as they hit accept, they're getting that cash and then they can ship it out. So no more of that buyer sends the offer, the seller eventually sees it, either counters or accepts it. But if he accepts it, sometimes you have to wait until the buyer notices that you've accepted it. And sometimes that can take 2 to 24 plus hours. Sometimes people get tied up at work and it takes them 3 days and they do eventually pay. But since it's instant, as soon as you accept it, you can ship it probably the same day, I would imagine. So as a buyer, you're going to get your stuff sooner. The way I personally ship my guitars is where I'm located, everything is within 4 business days. So I only ship Mondays and Tuesdays typically, unless you're really close to me. The idea behind that is packages don't move on the weekends, if you're shipping UPS anyways. So if I ship a guitar on Friday, that's going to take 2 business days to get to you. It's really going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 total days. But if I hold it and ship it on Monday and it's still only 2 days in transit, it is 1, 2 days. And it gets even worse if it's a 4-day transit. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 total days versus just 4. So say they send you that offer on a Wednesday right before shipping cutoff. If the seller knows they can accept it and get it out the door and have it to you by Friday versus accept it, wait for you to find it the next day and then ship it Monday, it just makes the process so much smoother. That also helps you as a buyer because sometimes you just forget to check out. It happens to the best of us. I'm not on eBay very often and I can't access my eBay account on my phone, so sometimes it does take me a couple of days to remind myself to log on to eBay to pay for an auction that I forgot I put a bid on. Now, along similar lines, eBay has auctions. And to even put a bid in now, you go through that exact same process. So that means people can have a lot more respect on eBay's auctions because 9 times out of 10, the winning bidder just never pays. Whereas I would say somebody that's making an offer, it's maybe 10% of the time they don't pay. So now let's switch over to the buyer's perspective. In an auction situation, there will be no more shill bidding, or at least less of it. So sometimes dubious sellers will create a second eBay account and bid against you just to bump the price of their item up. That's why if you ever look in their history and there's like a zero feedback bidder just bidding everything, usually that's what that is. Now they would actually have to back that up. Now, they could just refund it if they win and then do a second chance offering. That's why I say there might be less of that. But since most refunds don't actually give the credit card processing fees back anymore, I'm not quite sure how eBay's currently doing it, but Reverb limits you to how many refunds you can do in a monthly period. Maybe eBay has something similar, but that will help with that. So I want you to let me know in the comments, would you like to see more places adopt this strategy? If you're primarily a buyer, are you for this or against it? Because I can see why sellers would love it, but I can also see how some buyers might be turned off by this process, especially if it's their first time on the website, because you have to hand over that payment info just a little bit earlier. But to me, I would love to see this implemented on Reverb because I think it would help cut down on some of their scam situations. Because as far as I can tell, the only downside to this, besides requiring more buyer information up front, is you might see an uptick in returns because of buyer's remorse. They didn't have that chance to back out before they made payment. They were forced to go through with it. And you might see more credit card chargeback claims saying, I didn't authorize this when they clearly did. But other than that, I personally don't see a huge downside. And this isn't new. Other websites do this as well. Like, for example, Poshmark. They sponsored my show like 2 years ago, and they were doing it then. All offers are legally binding. As soon as you're accepted, it's just checked out and it ships to you. But Reverb's parent company, Etsy, I wanted to see if they were doing something like this. However, in the 20 plus listings I looked through, I couldn't see anybody that was actually accepting offers. But maybe I was just looking at the wrong ones. But I can only hope Reverb follows suit on this personally, because eBay is starting to look a little bit more attractive in that aspect. However, you do have to keep in mind their fee is still a little bit higher. But since we got a little bit of time left tonight, let's take a look at 2 cool new guitars. So this is one I found on a Facebook group that James over here posted. We've got some sort of a Les Paul custom with a very nice dark cherry sunburst finish. Now if we zoom in, he has some sort of a roller bridge on it and some Seymour Duncan pickups instead of the original T-tops. And it's a 3-piece top. Looks kind of like a mid-70-ish Les Paul custom from these photos. But what I really like is the fretboard on this one. So it's got our typical block inlays. They're straight up mother of pearl, looking beautiful, but all in between and up in their business are some additional inlays. You've got like a flowered leaf design and they're very intricate. Inlay work can be quite tricky. I especially like this because they've got a little bit of blue in the center. You have some intricate cuts there. It looks more like a wing. I mean, those don't look like stickers to me. That looks like true inlay work. So regardless of how you feel about their designs and making the fretboard much busier, I thought it was fascinating enough to at least share. Now if we go to our headstock, we can definitely tell the tuners have been replaced. We've got the bone nut, so it's likely still Kalamazoo built, likely in the 73 to 75 era. But if you're wondering why the inlays are so white on the headstock whereas the binding and everything else is ambered, it's because the lacquer has been chipped off. I wonder if that was done intentionally on this one, to match your pristine inlays, because whoever owned this definitely appreciates fine inlay work. Personally, I think what would bug me is I would always think this is the 12th fret because it's the biggest inlay, it draws your attention. But other modifications include, looks like at least replaced knobs, and we did have a jumbo refret on this puppy. Next up, a viewer of the show sent me this cool photo. So if you remember the Aldo Nova Les Paul we had documented in this episode, there's also the other one that people associated his name with, but it had nothing to do with him. It was the Studio Custom XPL. You can check that out in this episode. 3 humbucker, hockey stick headstock, big gaudy Gibson logo. Man, I'm glad I kept that thing. But this is kind of like a blending of the specs there. It's got the custom style fretboard, but this time it appears to only have 2 uncovered pickups, still has the mirror guard. However, from this particular photo, this is why I say I don't know exactly what it is. That almost looks like a Gibson style headstock, and the inlays do look kind of smaller than Gibson normally uses, kind of the Epiphone style, which you would normally find. And the viewer who sent me this said it was like a 2007, 2008-ish. I guess if anybody knows who this artist is, we need to get some more photos of this, because it's very possible it's legit and it's just a bad photo angle. But it's cool he's got the TP6 tailpiece on here. He was definitely influenced by that Studio Custom XPL. But alright, troglodytes, that's enough fun for today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, consider subscribing. I post videos like this every day. And you might even enjoy this next one.